That happened in on my mic slide.
I was across the street. Welcome to the special meeting between the Henry County Commissioners and Council to discuss the pond dredging project that has been going on. I'd like to call this meeting to order for the council, and I'll let Joe call to order for the commissioners.
Call this meeting to order with the Henry County Commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you. So I sent out an email summarizing the intent of the meeting. I'm not sure if everyone received that email, so I wanted to just briefly talk that through. I've talked with several people that right now the depth of the project or the depth of the pond is approximately 6 to 8 feet, which was the original intent of the project. And both the park superintendent and the park board feel that the funds are there to cover that project. So, but what we wanted to talk about today was the value, the potential value of adding some funds to dig deeper and remove some of additional muck from the pond. So if I mess anything up, y'all can correct me later, but I think we've spent about $796,000 on 2,200 triaxle loads of muck coming out of the pond. Is that accurate enough? Close
No.
enough? No, not right?
No. The entire project is $796,969.69. That's not just the clearing of the muck out of the pond.
Okay, that's good. Thank you, Bobby. So, and I did not actually do the math to get the amount of the 2,200. Do you have it with you? Can shout it out at me or come up
Haul
front?
dredged material is $600,512.
Okay.
Or
thank-
600,500, did I say that correct? $600,512 is what's on the, if anybody, I don't know if everybody has a copy of the scope of work and contract. Terry, I'm gonna let Joel, because the park board, the notice was not created to include the park board, there can only be 2 members here because the notice was only went out for the commissioners and the council. Yeah, you can go back to work.
Terry, I'm sorry. I apologize for that.
You didn't wait long enough for her to say, "Are you sure I'll leave?"
Okay. So I wanted to review potential funding options that we could consider to do additional digging. There's an option to add additional food and beverage funds, and that would be under the control of the council. And for those here in attendance, by the end of 2026, if we only spend what we've already allocated from food and beverage, we'll have 1.5 million accumulated. And that includes what we just allocated for Ready. So that is a potential option. We also have and invited the commissioners to discuss potentially using ARP funding. We do have approximately 3 million that have been earmarked for county buildings and could have a discussion about changing the usage of those funds for this. And then another option would be the non-reverting fund for the golf course, which has approximately $144,000 in it as well. So I wanted to.
And there's also 120,000 in ARP funds for the park.
Yes, thank you, Bobby.
You're welcome.
As I mentioned in the email, the $122,000 that's in ARP has been earmarked for restoring the edges of the ponds in ways that the project contract did not include. So I wanted to just open up for discussion from commissioners, council, and anyone else in attendance, as with the goal of trying to decide if we want to try to do additional digging.
Is my audio on?
I'm sorry, Kenan?
Is my audio on?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Hi, Kenan and Betsy.
So are we where we're supposed to be with the digging with what monies we've already spent, or are we behind on that?
We are on track with what the original scope the park had allocated $1 million of food and beverage money for this. They have up to $1 million of food and beverage money. The original scope is what was done. It's my understanding, and the park, somebody from the park board can, that they still have funds to complete this phase of the project. Nothing has changed with that phase of the project. Tom, I don't know who wants to pop up. But it's not my understanding that we're out of money for this phase of the project.
We do have sufficient funds to finish the
Is
project.
your mic on?
It's green light.
Go a
Hello?
little closer. There you go.
No, don't start.
You want a box?
Do not start, Steve. Do not start. We do have sufficient funds to finish the project as designed and as anticipated. You'll see in the list that you have that there are different line items, but some of those line items might not fully reflect what happens under that line item. That's fine. That's up to the contractor to do his own internal management of his funds for what line item is there. That was just used for the bid process. For instance, there's likely to be some monies left from the guardrail installation because that's going to be less than what is quoted in there. Some of that money might go to bring in more riprap or to take more deposits out of the pond. It's up to them to decide where they can use that if they do have some monies left in that area. But yes, they've not gone anywhere outside the amount of money that's allocated for the project.
And I think I had heard, we've had so many different conversations, that some funds might be needed to level out the, where we are now, that there was a desire to do some leveling in the pond.
Yeah,
that was
and
not
there's sufficient funds there to do that, and they've already started doing some of that. And that was one of the execution possibilities of the project. If anybody that's driven out by there, you'll notice that there's some areas that are very, very deep, that they're really deep. That was intentional because they know that some will settle and some will get pulled over that way. If you look at that elevated part in the middle of the pond right now, if you just filled it up with water now, some of that would move downhill through the natural process of settlement. So it was always going to be lower in that area, even if they didn't move that out. They're in the process now of scraping some of that extra off of that area that will just be much deeper.
Hey, Tom,
Yes, Kenan?
driving by there now, my understanding is ideally that high area that almost looks like an island currently would be cut down. Is that correct? And then the other thing, we had to have this meeting today because they were ready to pull out their equipment. And if
Yes,
they're
they're
ready to
taking,
pull out their
they're,
equipment, it
they're
doesn't
taking,
seem
they're
the island
taking,
gotta be- They're
they're
digging.
taking their long reach equipment out of there because they don't need it anymore to do it. And they're
Okay.
using the existing equipment to complete the sides. We asked them to hold on for a minute and leave access in case we came up with more funds to remove more of what is there in the middle. What is in the middle is being moved today. They probably moved some today. They moved some yesterday. They moved some the day before. That's already been scraped down a couple of feet, which was the idea when we originally started the pond project. We knew we weren't going to take all of it out of there. All we really knew was there was a target to remove about 2,200 triaxle loads, and that was believed to be sufficient to help the problem. We never thought we could get 100% down to the old bed.
What percentage are they now?
Let Sheldon answer that. He's talked to the engineer recently, or the
Okay. Well, I think he shared with me like 40%. That didn't seem to me like an ideal ending spot.
Yeah, I'm Sheldon Dines. With Joe Copeland and Angie Gibson, we put the plans together, and I've got them for anybody who'd like to look at them. Plan specs, contract documents for very little money that you had to spend. Getting back to the amount we took out, about 31,000 yards was removed. We had 2,275 triaxle loads. That was, up as far as I know, that's the final quantity. And to do some more, I talked to Ken in a little bit and about possibly getting some more money to take some more sediment out. So just to make it easy for you, $100,000 would take out about 4,500 or 4,500 more cubic yards, which would be 360 plus or minus triaxles. So you can put that in your head. That's what that would do at the present bid price, the $472 or $272.96 per triaxle is what the contractor bid. And they're willing to continue that if they get notice that the money's available, of course. And I talked to him today, and I told him we were having this meeting and let him know next week, first of the week, hopefully, if there was more money, so they didn't move out. They'll finish the rest of the project. It's just equipment for sediment removal that they're going to move out.
So if the 100,000, given the example you gave, were approved today, and the equipment is still there and to do that?
Yes, yeah, that's what I talked to Mike, who's the project manager. He was asking me about it last week or so, and I said, well, at this time, back then, I didn't know anything about any more money. But as this progressed, and I appreciate this special meeting to see if we could get more, yeah, they're still there, but they just want to know because they move all over the country, different states, and that particular equipment would be gone if we're done doing
So
the sediment.
So 100,000 would get it to where you as an engineer think it would be a better outcome than what it is as of today.
Well, to get you another 4,500 cubic yards of volume of,
Well, I kind of want to not correct that statement, but we're not in a bad outcome where we are today with the pond project.
No.
It's not a horrible outcome. It's not a horrible project.
no. And I know when we started this, I looked at how much money we had. I made an estimate. And there's no way we could take it all out.
Correct.
But if you look at the small pond, we went down to the bottom on it and it's a great looking, it's going to be good water. And we're trying to make quality water everywhere around the banks. And the part you see in the middle, that was about 6 feet deep before we drained it. But Tom told you, one of the things we're going to do is pull some of that back. If we don't do any more, haul off, we'll still pull that down, maybe a couple feet at the most. Try to use it along the base of the bank rebuilding. I'm going to have to bring in some fill material to rebuild those banks where they're all eroded. And then we're going to line it with riprap. It'll look nice when we're done. Yeah, it's improved it a whole bunch, but
Yeah,
on
I
the-
really appreciate how you all have worked hard to do the best you could. I think it's a great outcome, and we really appreciate everyone's hard work. And the question is just, do we want to make it more thorough? Not more successful, but more thorough to increase the time until we have to do it again.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's obviously we went through quite a thing to try to get it drained. The old gate valve, which was a great idea when it was built. I don't know when it was done, but that was broken, wouldn't work, and we finally had to use an alternative. We had to core the concrete wall to get it started draining, and very important to drain it. Because I really didn't get involved in this thing until probably March. I don't remember now for sure, but we got that on a fast track really to get it done. And I've told everybody Thanksgiving's our target date. And I think we just had exceptional weather. We're very lucky. If we'd have got a normal rainfall, we might not be worried about getting more out.
Sheldon, so the
Yeah.
scope of the project hasn't changed any other than the fact that we want to dig more out, make it last longer, and to make it a better pond.
That's exactly right. We're sticking We haven't, no, we haven't spent a penny more than what we have, and we won't do that. So this is just over and above what we contracted for in our original plans.
We
This
don't
would
want-
be a better outcome. More
Well,
money.
Well, there's all, if we put $11 million into this building, we'd have a better outcome than what we're gonna have with the $6 million. So we can do that with any project.
That's true. I appreciate the clarification on, knowing that this has been successful, but we can do more. And in my time on council, it seems like we've really worked hard to invest in Memorial Park because we know it's one of the crown jewels of the county. I would certainly be interested in entertaining what we could do further with, money spent efficiently and effectively. I'm not quite sure what that looks like yet. I know we have 3 different places of potential revenue, but I'm interested in hearing more.
I will tell you, I don't know how much attention you paid to it originally, but we had 4 bids, which kind of surprised me on that kind of a job. We had actually 3 we probably could have accepted. One was way out of bounds there, but 1.3 or I forget now, but was way too much for us to even contract. So this bid, like I said, each load is $272.96. And pretty easy. We keep track by the triaxle load and have a ticket for every load. So we verified the park board members have been great. They added up tickets 2 or 3 times, make sure it's right. And so we're all confident that we're getting our money's worth.
Is there any way you could quantify if we spend 100,000, it might extend the period of time X number of years before we have to go through the process again, or is that just too difficult to?
I'm not a geologist. They do studies about how much erosion takes place that filled that place up. And it's a unique thing. There's actually 552 acres of drainage area goes into that, which I was a little surprised when I had Angie do that. But I thought, how'd that thing get so full of sediment? It was like 6 feet deep down to riser where the overflow is, just muck. So the plans I did it for a reason. It's called a maintenance plan, not a restoration, not historical preservation, nothing. It's maintenance, which probably should have been done 50 years ago. But we're doing good. I mean, I think we're doing a good thing. We want that park to be something visual. When we come in there, we took off the guardrail on the north road. If you remember, that was traffic. People was driving through there all the time. We're making that a pedestrian area. And to stop that, and the old guardrail's gone, and it'll just be nice, and people can walk down through there, pull up there and fish when they get it done full, and fish back in it and all that. So we made some changes that I think are good improvements. Junk stuff, old poles and things that were along there, they're gonna be gone. Visually, I want it to look good.
And thank you for clarifying that this is a maintenance project, not a restoration project.
Absolutely. I got a reason for that.
Maintenance and we know that maintenance sometimes doesn't happen through every 5 years or 10 years or 20 years or 40 years. But thank you for clarifying that this is a maintenance project and not a restoration project.
Sheldon, do you know the last time that pond was drained or dredged?
What was it?
When was the last time this was done to that pond?
I know they took some, do you know when, Tom? I don't know. There was some taken out, but not nearly enough.
Joe said it's about roughly around 2,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing, just to let you know, there's a lot of unknowns out there, of course, especially utilities. And we're going to put new guardrail on the South Road because there is a county road there. And so we located the water line, and we were told, well, that's a private water line. I didn't know that. The regular locate people wouldn't do it. So why not? It's private. So Newcastle told me from the Road 3 up to the building is a private water line. So we had to pay for that. So there's little things that arrived at, well, I don't know, nobody else knew that. But it's interesting and we'll make sure somebody knows it from now on for sure.
Hey, Sheldon?
Yeah.
What was the main source of the sediment? Is it the small pond, or you said 500 and some odd acres? Is there any way to have done a study, or was a study done to know where most of that sediment is coming from? And has any of the project that's been done so far remedied or slowed any of that or influx of sediment?
First thing I did and asked the board to, and they did, was to get samples of that sediment. I didn't know if it's hazardous, not what. So there's all kinds of things like there would be, but there was nothing hazardous. So I said, great, because if it's hazardous, you don't have enough money to do this thing. But it isn't. And I don't know if anybody ever asked you that, but Alt Witzig out of Indianapolis did it. They did lab tests. They also did some tests for soils for me, a hydrometer test that tells you about silt and clay. There's a mixture. Of course, with Highway 3, you're going to have sand and salt and everything. When it runs off, it goes in there. And the drainage area actually goes as far north almost as Pritchett's. It breaks there, and then it comes in from the east also. So there's substantial drainage area. But I wouldn't have any way to get back to your original question, is that whether it's a 1/4 inch per acre per year or half
It's too hard of
inches.
a question. Yeah, not it.
I really don't know what
Okay.
to tell you there.
Tom, did you have something you wanted to add before we start doing next steps?
Yeah, about where some of the sediment might have come from, as Sheldon said, there's 500 plus acres that feed sediment into that pond. Of course, a lot of it is within the park itself, but a substantial amount of it comes down Memorial Creek there. There have been things dug into the pond to help control that sediment spreading throughout the pond. Where Memorial Creek comes into the lagoon area, that area has been deepened to function as a trap. And there are other places along there on the north side of the bridge. A similar trap area has been dug out. That's where the current comes in. It flows around on the west side of the lagoon and kind of on the east side of the lagoon, all headed for the bridge. It comes under the bridge. And the majority of the stuff that comes from the north property runs down along the north side of the main pond. The drainage that comes from the hill with the cannon on it, the area around Smith Auditorium and everything there tends to run down the south side of the pond. Almost nothing flows in a natural path down the middle of the pond. So those areas have been deepened, and around the spillway, that's very deep. If anybody's been out there, and an area up to 50 feet around that has been deepened, and that will function as a holding basin for the sediment that washes in there. So that'll pile up there before it starts to pile up in some of the other places.
Because it's not all going to be on a level, it's not all.
Right.
a
It's
level
not all
ground.
level. It's just not going to
It's
flow
just
in
not
and
gonna-
spread
and
out.
spread
Yeah.
out.
It
Yeah.
won't do that.
Drop it off.
So it has to fill above
Yeah.
approximately
Yeah.
50 feet before it would
It
ever start.
it drops off
or
as it flows in. If you've ever watched any of those gold mining shows,
Yeah.
that's what happens. So the stuff falls down to the bottom.
Mhm.
One of the other things, there's a lot of sediment that we have known for years. Anybody that's been going out there since they were little kids, Joe. No.
He got you on that.
No, yeah. A lot comes down Memorial Creek. Those of us that remember, which is pretty much everybody in this room, can remember when Memorial Creek was deep, except for Bobby, of course.
Yeah, thank you.
But it's filled up with sediment over the years. So some of it comes from there, and it comes from, believe it or not, there's a lot that comes from the area where the new Sam Hall Estates is being developed. There's a big retention pond of almost 3 acres going in there. That's going to trap some of the sediment there too, so it won't be washing down into the park. They will be faced with cleaning their pond out sometime in the future too, because all that area, as Sheldon says, the area all the way up to around Pritchett's is washing down into that area, and it's going all the way. You know, you're talking about almost microscopic silt in a lot of cases that goes a long way. So there's been an attempt to trap the sediment and get it to fall out in a controllable manner and at positions that would allow us to take an excavator and reach those areas and dip those out. Part of the maintenance that we can do in the future.
Thank you both.
A couple other things, I do have plans. If anybody wants to look at them, I'll hang around a little bit. Also, I have a concept. This is a different topic. I'm going to just bring it up because it's going to be part of what we want to do there with the bridge.
Which
That
is a
is not
different
part-
phase of this which is a different project, not
This,
part of
this
this
has
pond
nothing to
project.
do with what
Okay.
we just talked about,
Okay,
but it's right there.
right.
And I have a conceptual drawing here you might want to look at. It would be a wooden bridge. More like people could take pictures of a little covered bridge like, something real neat. I didn't come up with it, but a guy did that does very good work. But I'll tell you about that bridge because you probably don't know about it. It was in the Henry County Inventory of Bridges, so I got a copy of that. And the estimate to take that bridge out and replace it, of course, it was a traffic bridge at that point, $675,000. And I said, well, we can't do that. We don't have the money for that bridge for sure. And then that's when we started talking about pedestrian bridge, and it's still functional for that. It just needs clean up, get the deck where it looks decent. But this wooden bridge would be very neat. Little covered bridge thing would be something where people could walk to, and it would be just fit right in with the park. So right now, we don't have the funds to do that. Norm, we're asking for it today. But just wanted you to know, I'd like for, if you want to look at it, I'll pass the thing around. You can see what I'm talking about. Because we want to make that area a visual thing, and when people drive
The
it,
current pedestrian bridge is sufficient for pedestrians, safe for pedestrians to walk on.
that bridge, we put a steel plate on it and took triaxles over it that were empty. When the contractors asked me if they could go over the bridge, I said empty, but not loaded, because I don't know how good a shape it's really in. But they were running over it was empty. Oh, pedestrian,
Yeah,
wait, yeah,
safe for
it just needs repaired. And the banister parts, I think we can sandblast and maybe make it look good. It takes a lot of contacts of people trying to get things. Could you do this? Can you do that? So I don't have a real good number on that yet, but I'm gonna get one because eventually I think that bridge needs to be in there. It'd just be part of the pond. But I kept it out on purpose because I knew we didn't have the money to do it.
Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing that afterwards. I appreciate it.
Okay,
appreciate
is there any
that.
other questions? And you're more than welcome to look at that concept. I've got 2 or 3 copies you can pass around if you want to.
I've got
Thank you, Sheldon.
questions.
Okay,
Somebody said that the pond was drained or dredged in approximately 2000. Or is that correct? Or was it just drained and nothing came out?
Oh, Rita.
Rita? But nothing was taken out? In 2000, was anything?
So I'm
taken
going to
out of
repeat
it?
that because it's not on the mic. It was drained in 2012 to repair the overflow, but nothing was dredged out of the pond.
that's
Okay,
right.
thank you.
Was anything taken out in 2000?
My understanding that around the year
Around that.
2000, possibly a little bit before that, 1998, 1999, there were the county highway along with possibly Randy Neal running the excavator. They trucked a bunch of the material over to the county highway garage and dumped it there. That's what I was told.
I'm saying my understanding, that was just a lagoon. I don't think they got into the bigger,
Yeah, I was told that was a little pond down by the highway, but I don't know if that was
that was the
true.
only thing that was
So
dredged.
it could be 40, 50, it could have never been dredged for
Yeah.
all we know. Okay.
I'm saying that's the other thing that concerns me is the littler pond that's up next to 3 is very shallow at this point, and at what point are we going to have to do something with it?
A few years back, Keith Pritchett and I did soundings of all those ponds, and I think there was 2 or 2.5 feet of water in there is all there is. It's like a reflection pond, really. It's, it's not much water there. Pretty if it's not full of weeds. But yeah, sometime that ought to be, I agree. It'd be nice to do that one too, but we'll get this one done first. And, that one wouldn't be so bad. I don't think you could pump that one down pretty quick and reach a lot of it with an excavator. Just build out, sit there and be a lot less hassle than what we're doing right now.
Shannon, did you have other questions?
Yeah, Sheldon, you mentioned this is a maintenance project, and maintenance is one of those things that should be done routinely. And this is, I mean, 2,200 loads. In your professional opinion, what's the time frame that should be done on a regular maintenance schedule, and how much should be removed, or what level should the pond be taken to? Should we be looking to do this every 5 years, 10 years, and get it to a certain level, every 25 years, whatever it is? What's your recommendation from that standpoint?
Our intent here is to get it as deep as we can. The old rule that I used from tech specs for farm ponds is you wanted 50% of the area to be at least 8 feet deep for fish, and 50% of the area to be at least 6 feet. So we're going to have some nice depth out there. And that's the only reason I'd probably even think of trying to do this again for a long time. All of us will probably be gone by the time you need to do it again.
Oh, really?
Well, I can't imagine.
Well, are you saying that we're all old and we're not going to live?
I'm just guessing.
I know, no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah,
I
what
know,
you're saying.
I don't know. I don't think, like Tom said, there's some areas that we could probably trap some of that sediment if just needs to be watched, like a maintenance item. But to drain it down and do what we're doing, that'll be a while before that's necessary, because what we're after is quality water and depth. And I think that'll help a lot. I don't know how it got that full to begin with. It's just amazing to me for that much sediment to be in there, to be honest about it. But there's not a lot of farm ground, mostly highway and little creeks, and there's not much farm ground that really drains into it, some. So you can't really blame a lot of it on that, but it filled up.
Hey, Sheldon,
Yeah.
are there plans for a
Shannon, hang on. Yeah, Harold speaking.
Okay, I'm sorry.
What?
Go ahead, Harold.
I have a question. Now, how deep was that going to be around the edge of the pond? Approximately.
I didn't.
How deep is it going to be
Oh,
around the edge of
oh,
the
oh.
pond?
Around the perimeter, from the riser down there where Tom was talking about, it's probably 12 feet, 14 feet deep. But that was to repair the gate valve and stuff, but around the rest, we're probably gonna have at least 8 feet or better. We're building a little island there. They wanted an island again, so we're making it bigger.
Yeah.
But it's dug out around the island to where it's probably a good 8 feet deep around there.
Reason I asked that question, will there be some kind of a barrier to keep children from going into that pond accidentally?
Well, I don't know of any like it has a barrier to keep kids out, but I will tell you the slope that I put on the plans is for a reason. I specified a 3-to-1 slope, which means every straight out 3 feet, you drop 1 foot. So if you go out 6 feet, you'll be 2 feet deep on the slope. Well, that's pretty safe. But if you, if you put a ledge around it underwater, it's going to go. It's just going to wash away. We talked about that, but that's not practical. But a slope will probably stay because we're going to put riprap on it. So you can step out 6 feet and still only be 2 feet deep. So I don't think that's not like being a stone quarry or something.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the way it'll be all the way around it.
Does anyone have any further questions? Trying to, if for a path to go forward, we could talk about consensus, do we want to add funding? So I could ask the council, do we have consensus that we want to add funding or do we not? We could move forward that way, or do we need to ask additional questions before we have that conversation about whether?
Steve has his finger on his button.
I'm just holding it down.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to ask a question or make a statement.
Not yet.
I have one.
Sorry, Kenan, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Sheldon, is there a plan to put a fountain in there? Because I know that helps aeration, and I think people are used to, for years, a nice fountain in the center of that pond.
I'm pretty sure that's kind of in the plans. Of course, that'd be added after we're all done, the water fills back up. Yeah, that's been discussed for sure. So anybody that wants to make a little contribution, we're ready.
I have a
Steve?
quick question.
Yeah, not to make a joke out of that, but I think now's the time. I get real, that park is a unique place and it needs a lot of work and it needs money. And we just need to, at this point, I was hoping we could kind of push for some people who'd like to contribute to the maintenance of the park. Because they can see we're doing a lot of work. We're doing $1 million worth of work right there in the pond. And, so just kind of tell your friends and neighbors that, we want that thing to just improve every year. We need to do some work. So that's why I'm donating my time. That's why everybody that's worked on these plans, is the cheapest set of plans you'll ever get.
Betsy,
Thank
did you have
you.
a question?
Yeah, and I'm asking because I'm dying of curiosity. How many thousands of fishing hooks and fishing line have you guys dug up so far?
I don't know if you could even see them in that stuff.
If
I
you've
was
not seen
surprised.
the muck coming out of the back of the triaxle, there's no way to see a fishing line in the back
I
of that.
don't think you'd even
that
want to
muck.
stand back
No,
there
uh-uh.
and close enough to see it.
No.
Well, yeah,
Until it dried up.
Yeah, until it dries up in 2
It
or 3
dried up
years.
pretty good, but when they were hauling it, just to let you know, this was not a normal job.
I'd be curious. I've just always
Okay,
wondered.
well, the operator on the excavator, they had in his mind that if a truck had sideboards on it, I can put more on there. Well, lo and behold, when he got to the dump site, when he started going up the hill, the stuff was going over the top of the tailgate, making a huge mess. So he said, stop. You just, you drive down the road, it shakes it, whatever that triaxle up to the tailgate will hold, it'll stay in there. But you can't load it like you would with gravel or stone. And it was quite a deal because we knew people would complain about trucks and they're getting on the tires out on the road. And we made an effort and we were paying to keep as much of it off the road as possible, clean the road up. In the last few weeks, I haven't heard a thing. I don't know. No, everybody seemed to be okay. And I'm glad because the commissioners would have had their ear full.
We did have our earful.
But
Am I correct that you said the pond was 2 feet deep when you started?
there were, it varied. There was areas down there toward the overflow that was like 6 feet, about max.
In an ideal world, money's no object. What depth should the pond be?
Well, like I said, you need at least 8 feet for fish. And, Tom already mentioned to you, our plan is to rake, if we don't take any more out and just haul it off, our plan is to rake that, what you see out there left, we're gonna rake that down a couple feet more and use some of it along the toe, the banks and stuff. And once the water's in there, it'll look good.
Well, let me rephrase the question. Hypothetically, because this will never happen. We said today, we're gonna give you another $1 million to work put in that pond. Like I said, never gonna happen. What would you do with the $1 million?
Clean the pond completely out, do the bridge,
When you say
do
clean
the
pond
road. I don't know, we
completely out,
could find a place for it, believe me.
What does it mean to clean the pond completely out?
Yeah, oh, yes. I think, I talked to the project manager, we were kind of talking about it too. And I said, off the top of your head, how much more you need to get the rest of this stuff? Well, a couple 100,000. And he might be right. I
How
don't-
much? Say that again.
I don't know if he could or not. He just took that off the top of his head.
What did he say?
Couple hundred thousand
200,000.
would get the rest of it out of that pond.
Like
is
I
what he's
told you,
guessing.
100,000 will get you about 4,500 cubic yards. So you're looking at 9 or 10,000,
300 triaxles.
360. right?
360 triaxles roughly.
So 300,000 could potentially get the rest of it out.
Well, I would say so. I mean, we didn't measure it, but that would be, I'd bet my money on that one probably.
So I
But
want
the
to,
thing is, we're not going to spend more than it takes. So if there's some left, great. You know,
of course,
we're not,
Right.
we're
We're
not
just
just going to
trying-
say,
yeah.
we're going to spend all the money no matter what.
right.
We're going to use it for what it needs to be used for. And the board's very frugal about that, and me too.
Right.
We demand that we have verification of everything.
So if I ask the council as a preliminary question, is there interest in additional funding to try to more thoroughly clean out the ponds? 'Cause you have
Yes.
to Okay, Kinnan says yes.
I would
We're
want to
not
know,
voting, just.
yeah, I would want to know if the park and the board would rather see that money used for something like a bridge. Like Sheldon was talking about with the renderings. Just curious.
Park board president shaking her head no.
Well,
That's one opinion.
Rita, please come up to the microphone.
Thank you.
I've heard a lot of people say that that road there, it would be better if it wasn't open for cars and stuff because it's dangerous to walk up and down that way. And people that fish on that side, the cars fly through there.
I think Kyle was meaning finishing out the pedestrian bridge with the frame was, is that what you were
Correct.
talking about?
Oh.
Making it a vehicle.
Oh,
lane.
okay.
He was talking about making it a pedestrian bridge
Yes,
or making it a pretty pedestrian bridge.
yes. Yeah,
And that's what pretty pedestrian bridge in sign language looks like.
if you've seen any of the bridges over in Pendleton, got
Yeah.
some wooden bridges and it's not going to be that elaborate, but
So I think Kyle's question was, would you rather use the money to dig more out of the pond, or would you rather have that money to work on the bridge? Was that your question, Kyle?
Yeah, the pretty
Right.
bridge.
And I guess they can give their opinions, but since they have to vote on that, they can just give their own personal opinions. They
Yeah.
can't speak. for the
my
overall
opinion, I
board.
think it needs to be cleaned out and we can always do the bridge later.
I think we have money and we're kind of earmarking some of the ARP money for a pedestrian bridge. So to further answer Kyle's question, any extra funds would be put towards removing more dirt in the pond.
So Kinnan gave a thumbs up. Betsy gave a thumbs up. I'm open to discussing too. I'm thumbs up. Mike, you're part of the liaison. Are you interested in discussing further?
I think we've just discussed enough, really.
Shannon?
I guess I'm baffled by Mike's answer to that question. I believe that it would be money well spent to add dollars to continue to take muck out of that pond.
That's kind of what I was trying to say.
I think that's
Thank
what
you,
he,
Mike.
okay. And so,
Harold, what do you think?
okay,
We're not going to have somebody come back halfway through the $100,000 and want more. That would be my biggest concern.
I don't think, yeah, I mean, that doesn't worry me because it's not that kind of project. They take it out until they run out of the funding that you know what I mean? Just like they have now, we gave them a limited amount. They are stopping at that depth and we're just discussing if we're gonna do a more thorough mucking out. So council's willing to consider commissioners. Do you want to have a discussion, Joe, about if you all are interested in?
I'm interested, but I'm not interested in spending any art money on it. We've already got the art money allocated for buildings. If you want to do food and beverage, that's perfectly fine, but I'm not willing to change the art allocation.
But if the other commissioners were interested in changing the ARP
Well, if
allocation, they could say
if
so
they
now.
get 2 votes, it'll go. They just
Well,
have to have
my
two votes.
issue is, this is supposedly time sensitive. And if you're talking about, we're basically robbing Peter to pay Paul. And who's paying Peter back? And that's where we're at. The more money we take away from one project, because everybody says, well, we got that money earmarked. Well, we do too. And we got DLZ setting aside money and projects to finish buildings here. So is somebody replacing that money if we spend it now for a project at the park? Is somebody putting that money back after the first of the year to start the projects that we've already got earmarked for the courthouse and the Masonic building?
Because there's $140,000 in the golf fund, that the park can use. So
So-
if it's 300,000, then it's just another 160. And if you're going to have the money in food and beverage, that's not earmarked for anything, but the art money has been earmarked for, county buildings.
My opinion on the ARP money is that we have it earmarked for the county buildings. And we have additional problems that just occurred here in the last couple of weeks with the roof on the Justice Center that's going to have a pretty big price tag on it, something north of $200,000. Some of it may be insurance, but the majority of it will come out of our pocket. And that's my opinion.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
I texted Joel and I think the rest of the council, are we okay and not jeopardizing any future reauthorization to vote on this without the advisory committee? If I got a response, I didn't have internet. Is Joel there?
I'm here, yeah, and I think you're okay to do it. I did send out a response, but I think it was around 3 o'clock or so.
Yeah,
So it
I
wasn't
did read it.
Recent, but, yeah, I think you could vote to use authorized food and beverage today.
Okay, thank you. That makes me feel a little easier.
Sure.
I guess my question is on your time frame with that, because I guess we're trying to keep the equipment from leaving. So we don't have to pay a remobilization fee for them to come back in there and set back up if they get away. If it's not going to happen for a month or 2 months, they're not going to hang around with that equipment. So I guess my question is, how quickly is that going to happen? However we do that, as opposed to maybe using the money they have available now to get started on this until we figure out.
He
how
just
funding-
said we could authorize it today and they could stay.
I mean,
But there are I have some procedural questions for Joel. The park board has signed a contract. What process does the park board have to do? Because the council can say we're going to throw money at it, but the park board runs the park. This is the park board's project. None of us signed this contract or have authorization to modify this contract.
They would have to have a meeting and authorize a change order. Sure. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we.
Yeah, I mean,
that there's
before it-
nothing missed here.
Yeah, before it became binding and, fully legally authorized, the park board would have to approve the additional expenditure. And that would be, like I said, just a change order with the contractor that
Okay.
it would change the scope of the project to X number many loads.
All right, thank you.
I know we have about 3 million available dollars in ARP, Debbie. Is that what we basically said? There was 3 million set aside still?
By when?
Pardon me?
By when?
Well, I know everybody's saying that we have to have it under contract but that's not true. Well, there's new things that we have found out, so, it has to be spent by, the end of 2026.
Are we still planning to spend that $3 million on the Justice Center, Masonic Lodge and Courthouse specifically, like we discussed earlier?
That's already been appropriated out.
Yes.
And accounted for.
So
The-
also YOC in discussion?
Yes. It includes the whatever we appropriated for the DLZ project, which was like 1.6 million.
The $3 million is taking what is left in the fund, subtracting out of that money what projects have not been finished that still have funds remaining in them, came up with 3.1 maybe, somewhere in there is where that money came from. To say that we have that I haven't done anything with what was allocated for the Justice Center. That 3.1 was what was allocated, because I think it said remaining funds or something in the Justice
it
Center.
did.
So we do have some funds that we allocated for other purposes in ARP that will not be spent for those purposes.
Those were like the
Those
sheriff's
were
cars.
already taken out of, those are already accounted for in that $3 million.
Sorry, I guess where I was going with that was, that wasn't necessarily funds we thought we were going to have for the remaining 3 buildings. Those
I
were
can't answer that.
funds, right?
That's not my,
I'm,
that's
I'm
not
just
for me to answer.
discussing, I mean, just saying, like, we had said some will be for sheriff's cars, they'll be this for this purpose, and now those funds are not going to be used for those purposes.
No, they are going to be used for those purposes.
Some of the line items that Debbie and I talked about,
Well,
we
th-
felt
this-
like
it's
we're not
changed.
going to, I'm sorry.
And so are you referring to like how you
Yeah.
do it? Yeah.
What you and I and Jason all talked about
Yeah,
agreements.
the treasury regulations require things to be quote unquote obligated by the end of the year. And what obligated means in the treasury regulations, they've now come out with some guidance that says, well, you can do what's called the interdepartmental agreement for the use of these funds. So your example with the sheriff's department, if those cars hadn't been purchased, let's say, that were specifically allocated, you could come up with an agreement between the council of commissioners, the sheriff's department that just says, these expenditures will be made before the end of 2026, and that will be sufficient accounting it for being allocated.
Just for example, the money that was allocated for converting records to digitizing, thank you. Is that project over and do the remaining funds come back?
The remaining funds would just be put back into the.
Right, so that was just kind of my example, was that some of these funds that were allocated for certain purposes are not we didn't spend all of the money that we had allocated. I forget if it was 700,000, 400,000, there was a significant amount of money that, so I don't want to go down a rabbit trail if no one else on the council is interested in this.
I think it's a
questioning.
moot point to
Okay.
discuss ARP.
Okay.
That I really do. I
Mhm.
think that the commissioners have allocated that, and I think a statement was made that we could spend all of that and another $5 million on buildings if we had it. So I don't know that we need to go down
Okay.
that rabbit hole. I think the real question is, do we use food and beverage money, and the money then that is set aside in the non-reverting fund from the golf course is an option. And I guess the question remains is, how much money do we want? How much dollars towards this? I mean, 360 loads for $100,000 is, I don't want to say insignificant, but it's not as significant as taking 1,000 loads out of there when 2,200 loads have already come out of there. So I think that's the discussion we need to have, is how much do we want? We all said we would be interested in trying to get more loads out of there. So how much money are we interested in spending? Or how many loads do we need to get out of there?
Yeah, Shannon, sorry.
Go ahead.
What you just said was exactly where I was arriving. It sounds like ARP's out. We don't need to talk about it. I guess my question is, just for clarification, what is the range of how much we could potentially spend on this project? And I'm curious, is the park board willing to dip into that 140,000 of the golf course non-reverting funds? And are they favorable on this project? If there's any, I know they haven't been able to, I know there's only 2 members here, but I want to get a sense of the temperature they have towards this project.
Can I ask a question? Because Sheldon made a comment earlier that you thought 200,000, according to the contractor, would probably be sufficient to get the majority or pretty close to all of that out of there. So because that's roughly 720 loads.
Sheldon, can you come up to the microphone? I know I'm a stickler for people talking in the microphone. They can't, people on the Zoom can't hear and we're being live streamed.
Gotcha. I would say that would get the majority of it, and it would certainly be like 10,000 cubic yards, which is a lot of material. And if it was not quite all used up, we would stop. We're not going to use the money up just because we have it. It's because we hope we'd get the end product where we want it. So if you do 200,000 and we say, well, that looks good, let's quit. We're not going to just flute the money away. But I'm thinking he's probably pretty close. He's been doing this a long time, and looking at it, he's probably right. It takes more, pretty good chunk to get the rest of it just completely out of there.
Was it 200,000 that he said, or 300,000? So I think I
200.
misunderstood.
I'd say everybody'd be pretty pleased with 200,000.
He said 200, I think Shannon referenced 300. Is that right?
Oh,
Yeah, I just
oh,
read
I'm
it out.
sorry.
Yeah, you just
Well,
referenced
like I
300.
said, we'll be frugal. We're not going to spend your money if we don't use it. I mean, I don't know exactly what it would take, but if it took 250,000, then we'd quit. We're not going to just throw it away. So whatever you feel comfortable with to let us take more out, we'll use it properly. That's all I can say, because I don't know how much is actually left.
I
But
appreciate
my
that.
eye,
I'm sorry, Betsy.
No, I sorry, it's hard to know when to jump in, and
Yeah, 'cause there's a delay. I know there's a delay.
yeah, I'm not trying to interrupt anybody. So it sounds like our range is 200 to 300,000, and you guys will spend as much as it takes and not a penny more. I guess I'm at the point where I want to know how much is the park willing to kick in, and what do we do about the rest? And we probably, yeah, that's where I'm at.
I
So-
agree.
And I think the park board would have to have a meeting to come up with they would have to meet to come up with what they were willing to kick in.
Right.
Rita, would you, as the president, be willing to put that on the itinerary to discuss the 144,000 as a potential source for the dredging? Not that you would even vote on it, but would you be willing to put it on the itinerary?
Let me ask a question. I guess my thoughts are, if the park board thought that 140,000 would be a good spend to continue to take loads out of the pond, they'd have already done that.
I wondered
right?
about that too. I mean, they also
mean, they
still
have
need the
control.
bridge.
Well, I
and
don't
they
know,
have
this
a
that discussion hasn't even been had. They didn't know that they had it. It wasn't,
Okay,
it's not like they knew about it and they go, no, we're not gonna spend
okay,
it.
thank you.
Yeah.
as of a few days ago, we weren't aware of any additional money. I wasn't. I don't think anybody else was. And I talked to Ken a little bit, and then this kind of developed. So we'll be happy to get some more, but you have to feel comfortable in giving it to us if you can. It'll be used properly. That's all I can tell you at this point, because there's still plenty to take out. But like I said, when I started, you're gonna have to know next week if we have the money or we don't to do additional removal. Because the whole outside part, they're working on it now, doing the slopes, and then eventually we'll do the riprap and guardrail. We can't take more out after that's done. That's done. This part has to be done first before we finish the rest.
Betsy, did you get your line of thinking that you were following? You have a follow-up?
Yeah,
question?
I think so. And I'm just trying to get a sense of all the nitty gritty here. Personally, I'm inclined to vote to financially support this. I guess it's just a matter of how much, if any, is the park board willing to kick in, and then what else is needed after that. I don't know how we get there. It sounds like we might be having a few meetings the next week or two.
I've got an idea. My idea is, I feel good, and we're probably not there, but I think we could talk for another hour if we wanted to. I would like to say something about 150,000 with the hopes that the park board would see a need to go a little bit higher, whether that's 50,000 or 100,000. Let that be their decision. But that's where I'm coming from currently. I feel good about making a motion for 150,000 with the hope, sincere hope, that the park board, who's actually overseeing the park, sees a need or will know that there's a need to put in 50 to some odd 75,000 more to really get this down to where it should be, according to what I'm hearing from Sheldon and Tom.
Or even exploring a match or something
Well,
like that.
I do have a question, and this is more for the park board I know the locations that we're hauling, are these people willing to take any of these haul locations, willing to take additional loads? Because it has to be hauled out somewhere. Are any or all of them, or has anybody asked them? Now that they can fund whatever the council can say, we're gonna do this, but my question, and the question that needs to be asked by the park board, are the places that the muck that we call it is being dumped, are they willing to continue to receive
I checked-
another 1,000 loads or 300 loads of muck?
Well, obviously, I wouldn't think of contracting with the contractor without having a dump site. I checked one out and there's quite a lot of room there. Another one. I'd say yes to that answer. I haven't asked because I didn't know if we.
Right, exactly, but and honestly, that just popped into my head as we're talking about all this, is because we've been talking about dump sites
Well,
for.
I'm not gonna go into how hard it was to find a site to begin with.
Uh-huh, yes, it was.
That was another story, but that you don't need to know that one.
Yep.
But
I know
we'll
that
find, we'll find a dump site. I've had people that call. They think they want a few loads, but there's more than a few loads, so I had to have a major dump site.
Right,
In this case, and I know one site already, it'd probably take most of it.
okay.
And there's another one that takes some, so I'm not, that
Well,
wouldn't be
I just
my-
wanted to make sure
Well, you're
get
right.
that covered, because if we can't get it dumped, there's no point in.
Well,
digging.
I would never,
Yeah.
ever make a change order without that.
Exactly.
If we made a motion to do a match and the park board meets and they discuss and they decide they really need that $144,000 for a bridge or for whatever, then that would mean no more mucking. So that would be the downside to that, right?
And I'm really not interested in
Mhm.
putting dollars towards hope. If we're gonna put dollars out there, let's get the darn thing done.
Well, and there's talking about, well, we have money earmarked for here and we want to use this money for here and we want to use this money for here. Well, that's all well and good that we want to hold on to that money to look at the bridge. The bridge isn't even a part of this project.
No,
So don't hold on to that money to try to maybe that bridge project doesn't take place for 5 years. It doesn't make sense to me to go, well, yeah, I want to earmark my money in my personal account for something else, but if I get a bill that I have to pay, I can't tell my doctor's office that I can't pay your bill because I've already earmarked that money because I want to buy a new purse. So while it's all well and good to have plans for money set aside, and I don't have a problem with that, we can't just say, well, yeah, I know, we want to do this, but we've already said we want to hold it out for this. So there has to be some buy-in from the park board and some
Yep.
some
Well, we
skin
just-
in the
we just said
game,
the same thing
because
about
right
all the
now,
county buildings
the
and
park
art
board,
money.
the park, I mean, it's all county money, but it's all been paid for out of food and beverage. They've not had to take any of the money out of their budget or their funds to do any of this. And I think, and again, I'm not gonna have a vote in this. I'm just telling my opinion. People need to have a skin in the game, a little bit, anyway.
well, today we're just talking about removing additional sediment. I probably even shouldn't have passed the bridge out, I guess,
Well,
because
no,
that's
but
not part of
the
it.
statement by
But
Councilwoman Hoon was that they
that's
have
what
that
it's
money
for.
earmarked for something else.
That's the only thing we're talking about today, so I
exactly.
can tell the contractor, yes or no, we want to take some additional while they're here. If not, I mean, it's gonna be nice either way, but that's why we're here. If you want.
Susan, can I make a motion?
I was just gonna say that the floor would be open for a motion from the council since we're talking about food and beverage
I'd like
funds.
to make one.
Shannon also would like to make a motion. So do you two want to arm wrestle for it, or I gotta?
I
kind of
spoke up first.
speaking First, so.
Seniority. I'm over 70
I
and I'm bedridden. I make a motion, 150,000 towards food and beverage, and with the hope, and this is nothing binding, with the hope that the park would put skin in the game of at least 50,000 from food and beverage.
I'd second
not
it, but I
opposed to
also
it.
want to know what Shannon's motion would have been.
I can't do that
So
according to
You
the
can
record.
ask for discussion after a
gotta have a
second,
second.
or the motion can die on the floor. So that would be the only way we would hear Shannon. So is there a second to Kennan's motion?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second that the council would provide $150,000 from food and beverage in hopes that the park would do some type of matching. Is there any discussion?
I have no interest in funding the Hope, and I don't think that even the 200,000 is gonna get the job done. I think it's gonna be more between 200 and 300. So I'm not in favor.
I agree with Shannon.
That's tax dollars. I know one thing. Another 25 years, 150,000 will be 400,000. And I don't think the food and beverage is going to increase that much if we have food and beverage.
And many
So-
people will wish that the council had just put out the 250, 300,000 now to finish the job and not waited until it cost $1 million.
They
There's a
came in
motion.
asking, they came in asking for 100,000.
We have a motion and a second, so we're going to take a vote, and I will start with Kennan,
Yes.
Betsy,
No.
Kyle,
No.
Mike,
No.
Harold. I vote no. Shannon,
No.
the floor is open for another motion.
I move that we allocate up to $300,000 of food and beverage to get the significant loads removed from the pond. And I noticed that said up to.
And I would hope that the park board would, on their own, decide to allocate a reasonable amount, given that this is their. This
Well,
is,
but
just-
if the council allocates up to 300,000, the park board doesn't have to allocate a dime.
Yeah.
I understand that. I'm saying I hope that they choose to do that so we don't have to spend the whole 300,000.
And there's also another pond that needs to be done that if there's extra money, they should be doing the other pond while they got the equipment there to do it.
As we have said, there's never a shortage of work. There's always a shortage of funds. So we have a motion. I will not yet second it from the chair. I'll leave the floor open, but I might second it if nobody else does.
Kennan's right too, to note that the park board has skin in the game and they should, I hope they step up, but I also want to make sure the job gets done fully.
I second the motion. Is there any discussion? We will vote by roll. Kennan,
No.
Betsy,
Yes.
Kyle,
No.
Mike,
No.
Harold. I vote yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion also failed. Is there another motion?
Something in between.
I make a motion that we fund up to $150,000 with agreement from the park that they put in the other 100,000, which can be a combined of 250.
So that's a contingent. It'd have to be contingent upon the park board.
Right.
agreeing. Is that what Shannon, is that what you said? That's what Kennan said? That was
Kennan's
his
wasn't
motion?
contingent. It was a
Oh, Kennan's
suggestion.
was on
Oh,
Hope. No,
I-
sorry.
Suggestion, this is
Yeah.
contingent.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Discussion.
I still think it's Hope.
Probably is, but they know the feeling.
And I will just say that we have a park board who spends time talking about all the needs of the park and evaluating what needs to be done. And they are looking towards the bridge. They're looking towards aeration on the pond. There's some lights that need to be done. So tying their hands in this way could have negative consequences. And that's where my mind is right now. So we'll vote by roll. Kennan,
Yes.
Betsy,
No.
Kyle,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Harold. No.
No.
Did someone count?
Yeah, 4 yeses.
Okay. Motion passes. 150,000 from food and beverage, for the purpose of dredging the ponds.
Contingent.
Contingent on the park board putting in 100,000. Is that what it was? So that, I'm gonna throw this out there too, and I know we'd have to rescind and start over, but the park board doesn't have time to potentially meet to decide before we have to tell the crew to pull the equipment. So they
They'd
may
have to have a
just drive away.
special meeting on Monday.
Can't, they have to
They have
post
to-
notice, so they,
Wait a minute, because Sheldon and Tom, Sheldon and Tom said that they're still there. They just took the long reach. They're not going anywhere. Isn't that what you said? That they're not going anywhere? Right, well, but if they did a notice,
charge you to
if a notice
remobilize
went
that
out today
equipment.
for 48 hours would be Tuesday, right? You can have a meeting at 6 o'clock on Tuesday night. You don't have to publish, just have to notice it.
Well, the question was with them. They just want to know how many more loads if we want them to take it out. And they would do it
Yeah, so-
immediately.
So the park board could have a meeting Tuesday at 6 o'clock, because it's after
Okay.
5 now, to make a
So-
decision.
I mean, that would depend on if they could get quorum. by
I'm sure they
6.
could.
So then we'll know the total.
They got
That's all
quorum
I
to come
care
here
about,
pretty
is the
quickly,
total
so I
that'll
think
be
they could get
available.
quorum on
Okay.
Tuesday.
Well, we didn't invite them, so they didn't actually get quorum to come here. Okay, so is it the intent of the council that if they can't get their meeting together, we would be satisfied with them receiving no additional funding from food and beverage?
I don't love that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I just said I don't love that. I mean, I think I want this job to be completed to the extent it can be, knowing that it's going to be a lot more expensive in the future. I I would really like to see the park board kick in for this. Like Kenan said, skin in the game, but we probably need to be at 250 or 300,000 total.
Right. I think the ball's in their court.
So unless.
We
you
said
guys-
150,000.
Unless somebody rescinds, makes a motion to rescind the other, it's contingent upon the park board.
Yes.
It
we
is.
understand,
Folks
Bobby,
know,
we
then-
understand.
Yeah.
We understand.
Yes,
The council
and I
is
think the ball's in their
discussing-
court.
The council is discussing the purpose of this vote right now. So if I don't hear anything from the council, especially from Mike who made the motion, I don't remember who seconded it. We all understand that if the park board is not able to meet within, Tuesday, Wednesday, the trucks will leave and the pond won't be dredged anymore. It would require a motion to rescind. The floor is open.
I'm good with the way it is. The ball's in their court. And they have skin in the game if the ball's in their court.
What's
I-
the expense of keeping them busy for a day with another day or two with the equipment they have here?
Not a problem to keep them busy for a few days. Well, so you think that you guys can get together?
So what you're saying is that even
Shel-
if they have a meeting on Monday, or Tuesday and advertise it, they can get them an answer by the end of Tuesday, right?
Right. Yep. Yep. Sheldon and I have both talked to him several times and we told him it could be the 13th. That's their next meeting. But we're going to try to have you an answer on Monday as to what the direction is.
Okay.
That's all we could tell them because the money wasn't there. And we knew there were constraints on having meetings. So,
Okay.
and they're agreeable that they want to see it be a success. Their skin in the game is their name.
Right.
I want to see it completed as well, but when we were talking earlier about the bridge was a project that could take place tomorrow or 3 years from now. And the pond has to take place right away.
That's exactly right. And we we intend to use the ARP money that's headed out that way for the bridge. If we get the quotes that we want, and the ancillary projects around the pond, we should have enough art money to cover those things. The pond is, the dredging of the pond is the dredging of the pond. It's not any of those other things, and that's where we intend art money to go. There are funds that were left over from the sale of the golf course that have been, in my estimation, improperly used in the past. That fund has kind of sat there and been quiet for a while, and we haven't, I knew it was there. Anybody that wanted to go to the state website and look it up could see that money was there. No one's hiding that money, but it had, there's some question as how it had been used. So we didn't want to bring that up until we have to use it. I can't speak for the park board, but there could be some money for some match.
Let me ask a question of Mike. Mike, would you be opposed to making 50,000 of that 150 not contingent? And they have to match the 100? That would get them 170 loads more and they could continue right on going. And they just couldn't get more than that 170 loads. And I don't even know if that's worthwhile, but it buys a little time.
All right, and the intent would be to remove the urgency of the meeting?
Same dollar amount, just remove the urgency and whether or not it can be done. And I would hate for them to take that long reach equipment out of there on Monday and have charge us to remobilize it. I know that that may or may not happen, but if they can't get a quorum, can't get a meeting together, we're still talking about hope.
We're talking Tuesday's election day. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh, that's true too. I didn't think about that one.
So if we were to modify the agreement to be 50,000 non-contingent and 100,000 match, would that accomplish what you were trying to accomplish, Mike?
Sheldon, do you think they'll have that, they'll take that equipment out? Or do you think you can talk them into keeping it till Wednesday?
Because they're still continuing to work. They're working now. And they,
If we just let them go now, they might remove the section that they're using to access that part of the pond. They can work around other areas and basically leave an access point and do everything else and leave that until they need it.
in my mind,
Do you
I'm
think that's
sorry,
right?
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
There are.
okay, yeah, just take it to him. Sheldon, Debbie's just gonna bring you the mic.
There you go. I wasn't thinking. Thank you. I need to walk anyway, believe me. I talked to the contractor's representative today. He was on another job and I told him what we were doing and he was good with it. But the thing is, we just need to get some definite how much money we're going to get. And if you say we're getting so much, I'll tell him we're going to get that much and go ahead. Because they haven't even invoiced us for anything yet. So they're not, we're probably a pretty small part of their big operation. They had a job in Alabama for 56 million on an ash pond. So, but that don't mean our job's not important, but I don't think it's like somebody else that couldn't operate until we said, here's the money. So, that's really what I'd like to see is just a definite plan to say, this is how much you got or not. I can adjust it from that. That's all I need.
So if the park board had a meeting on, okay, I forgot that the election was Tuesday. If they had a meeting on Wednesday, nobody's, they're not running fire, their hair on fire, taking all their equipment out Wednesday at 8 AM.
No, because he knows that when we start talking about this, it was short notice again. And, I told him that. So I told him, don't get in a big hurry. We're not done. So they'll work with us, but this thing about
But they don't want to wait.
till
10
the middle of the
days. They don't
month,
wanna
they're,
wait 7, 10 days.
they're not going to
They're
work.
waiting till Wednesday potentially is not.
I'd say if they
right.
know next week, we'll be pretty good shape, but I just need to know how much. And I'll say, we've got it allocated, we'll get it. They're in the process and he'll go right ahead. He trusts what we do. So,
Thank you so much.
and I'm not paying for the difference if we don't,
So
if we
there
don't
is,
get it.
I don't hear any other motion on the floor from the council, so the vote to allocate $150,000 from food and beverage with a contingent match of 100,000 from the park board. That what we said? Vote stands. Is there any other business from the council?
Just want to thank everybody because they've done a lot of good work between the shelter house and the committee set up for the pond. I think a good park's going to be even greater in a few months, and it's showing now. So kudos to everybody involved.
Joe, you can have any closing comments or closing of your meeting that you wish.
Motion to adjourn. That's what you looked at me for, wasn't it?
Motion's been
Motion
made
to
and
adjourn.
seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Adjourned.
Motion to adjourn the council meeting.
Thanks,